My story takes place on the lonely backroads of rural Montana, where I took a job as a security guard at a remote mining facility. Surrounded by miles of desolate landscape, the mine had been closed for decades, its towering structures casting long, ominous shadows in the moonlight. My job was simple: patrol the perimeter, monitor security cameras, and ensure no one trespassed on the property. The first few nights were uneventful, the silence broken only by the howling wind and the occasional coyote's cry. But on the fifth night, something changed. As I made my rounds, a prickling sensation ran up my spine. I felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as if I were being watched. I stopped at the edge of the compound, my breath misting in the cold air, and scanned the darkness. The beam of my flashlight cut through the gloom, revealing nothing but dust and shadows. I shook off the feeling and continued my patrol, my unease growing with every step. Later that night, as I sat in the security office, my eyes glued to the bank of monitors, I noticed something strange. One of the cameras, positioned on the roof of the main processing plant, flickered erratically. The image on the screen distorted, then resolved into a grainy view of the deserted rooftop. At first, I dismissed it as a technical glitch, but then I saw it. A figure, tall and gaunt, standing at the edge of the roof. It was facing away from the camera, its head bowed as if in prayer. My heart pounded in my chest. I grabbed the microphone connected to the camera and spoke, my voice trembling. "Hello? Can you hear me? Identify yourself." There was no response. The figure remained motionless, a dark silhouette against the backdrop of the night sky. I reached for the phone to call my supervisor, but before I could dial, the figure turned. Its head snapped up, and for a fleeting moment I caught a glimpse of its face. It was pale and gaunt, with eyes that seemed to burn with an unholy light. A blood-curdling scream escaped my lips as the figure lunged towards the camera. The screen went black. Panic surged through me. I scrambled back from the monitors, my heart racing. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking uncontrollably, and finally managed to dial my supervisor. The phone rang and rang, but there was no answer. Just then, the lights flickered and died, plunging the office into darkness. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. I could hear the blood pounding in my ears, the sound deafening in the sudden silence. I fumbled for my flashlight, my fingers closing around its cold metal casing. As I clicked it on, the beam illuminated a sight that made my blood run cold. Standing in the doorway, its eyes glowing with an eerie light, was the figure from the rooftop. My mind raced, desperately searching for an escape, but the figure moved with unnatural speed. It lunged at me, its long, sharp fingers reaching for my throat. I screamed and threw up my arms to protect myself. The figure slammed into me, knocking me to the ground. The flashlight flew from my grasp, landing on the floor with a dull thud. The office was plunged into darkness once more, the only light coming from the faint glow of the computer monitors. I scrambled back, kicking wildly at the figure, but it was relentless. It pinned me to the ground, its cold, rancid breath washing over my face. I could smell the stench of decay, the odor of something ancient and evil. I thrashed and struggled, but the figure was too strong. It tightened its grip on my throat, its fingers digging into my flesh. I gasped for air, my vision blurring at the edges. Just when I thought I was about to black out, the figure suddenly released me. I lay on the floor, gasping for breath, my chest heaving. I looked up, trying to make sense of what had just happened, but the figure was gone. I scrambled to my feet, my body trembling, and stumbled towards the door. I fumbled with the lock, my fingers numb with fear, and finally managed to get it open. I stumbled out into the hallway, my lungs burning for air. I didn't stop running until I reached my truck. I jumped in, slammed the door shut, and fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking uncontrollably. As I put the key in the ignition, I glanced back at the building. The windows were dark, the only sound the howling wind. But as I turned away, I could have sworn I saw a figure standing in one of the windows, its eyes glowing in the darkness. I didn't wait to see if it was real or just my imagination. I sped away from the mine, the terrifying encounter seared into my memory. I never returned to the mining facility, and I never worked another night shift again. To this day, I can't explain what I saw that night. Was it a real entity, a malevolent spirit guarding the abandoned mine? Or was it all in my head? My story serves as a chilling reminder that some places hold a darkness that even the bravest souls can't comprehend. But my experience is not unique. Countless others have reported similar encounters, their stories echoing the same themes of isolation, fear, and the unknown. These tales, often dismissed as hallucinations or nightmares, serve as a stark reminder that the line between reality and the supernatural can be terrifyingly thin, especially in the dead of night. And so I move on to my next story, a tale that takes us to the sterile halls of a city hospital, where I found myself face to face with the unexplainable. I had always been a skeptic, dismissing ghost stories and paranormal phenomena as nothing more than overactive imaginations. But my beliefs were about to be challenged. It was during a particularly busy night shift in the intensive care unit that my world shifted on its axis. The hospital was eerily quiet, the usual hum of activity replaced by an unsettling stillness. I was tending to a patient, an elderly man named Mr. Davis, who had been admitted earlier that week with pneumonia. Mr. Davis was a kind, gentle soul, and I had grown fond of him during my shifts. As I checked his vitals, I noticed something strange. His heart rate, which had been stable just moments before, was now racing erratically. I frowned, my brow furrowing with concern. I checked the monitor, but there seemed to be no explanation for the sudden change. I tried to calm Mr. Davis, speaking to him in soothing tones, but he remained agitated. His eyes darted back and forth, as if he were following something only he could see. "Help me," he rasped, his voice weak and trembling. "Please, help me." My heart sank. I knew Mr. Davis was terrified, but I couldn't understand why. I reached for the call button to summon another nurse. But before my fingers could press the button, the lights flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. And that's where we leave Sarah, alone in the darkness with a terrified patient and a growing sense of dread. The night shift can be a breeding ground for fear, a time when our senses are heightened and our imaginations run wild. But are these stories merely products of our overactive minds, or is there something more sinister lurking in the shadows? What do you think happened next? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below, and let me know if you'd like to hear the chilling conclusion to Sarah's story. And if you enjoyed tonight's journey into the darkness, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel for more spine-chilling content, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a terrifying tale. Until next time, sleep tight, and remember the things that go bump in the night are sometimes all too real.